Hi everybody. I think we're live. Hopefully somebody can join on here and be able to say hello and let me know that this is working. It says live in the corner, so hopefully it's all on. Let's see. Somebody's watching. Hello, Helen. We'll have other people joining us here in a minute. I think this is working. Thank you for joining. Please drop a message, say hello. Let us know where you're watching from. Maybe even tell us how you found Survivors, our Facebook page, our group. Love to, let's see, okay. Good, yeah, it's working. Okay, so I'm just going to start with my adoption story. I am a birth mom, and I have not ever shared my story publicly before. So I'm going to be extremely raw, vulnerable, probably going to be a little bit of tears. And that's okay, because I think there's beauty in being able to connect with people that way. And so maybe if you're just joining us, tell us where you're watching from and yeah, maybe how you found Survivors. My name is Elizabeth Crapo, and as I mentioned, I'm a birth mom, and I'm going to be speaking to anyone that has an adoption story, or maybe you know someone who has an adoption story. Maybe someday you might have an adoption story. I'm going to be speaking to that child that was adopted, to those parents that have adopted other children, to those parents that maybe are hoping to find a child that they can adopt. And I'm speaking to birth parents, to that birth mom. I know a little bit about what you've been going through. And I'm hoping that my story can help somebody in some capacity. And so my desire is that maybe tonight I can bring hope after some grief and pain and loss. I know that my story is unique to me, and I know that my miracles and my tender mercies are very special to me. And my heart grieves because many adoption stories don't have as much. They have been filled and are continued to be filled with grief and loss and pain and regret. So I just want so desperately for anyone to know that if you do have an adoption story, to please invite God into your story. He can create a new narrative in your own mind and create possibilities, and he can help change perspective. I believe adoption is sacred and of God. He can make your story beautiful with his grace and power, and whether it's in this life or the next, he can make all things whole. There are many details of my story that I won't be sharing. Some details aren't necessary for public knowledge, and most importantly, I am protecting my birth son and his family, and then I'm protecting my own children and family. So I'm asking that my adoption story and the things that I share tonight are not to be shared with my family, my own children specifically. All these years, I pray earnestly to know how and when to share my story with each of them, as they are each at different ages and levels of knowledge and understanding. So please respect me and my loved ones as I put myself out there in an effort to help anyone that has an adoption story or finds themselves having to go through an adoption story. As I share my experiences, I am going to share with you the mindset that I had, the feelings that I had while I was going through it. So now I'm much older, I'm much more mature, have a lot more understanding. But I'm going to be kind of going back into that so that you can kind of be on that journey with me in my thoughts and my feelings at that time. After I went away to college, I thought I knew where I was going. I thought I knew what I was going to be doing. I had a lot of excitement and for the future, and I just thought I knew that I wanted. I wasn't necessarily looking for a husband anytime soon or even thinking about a family. I just was excited to be out on my own and see what I could do on my own. And then after a few years, I just got lost. I didn't have direction anymore, and I was confused. And I started hanging out with people that I shouldn't have been hanging out with, and I started doing things that I should not have been doing. And I was date raped. When I found out that I was pregnant, I felt the color just leave my face. I was numb. I was in shock. I was immediately asked if I wanted information on abortion, and though I couldn't move, I said no. And in the next few weeks, I felt so alone. I felt so ashamed. How could this happen? What had I done? I was in shock. I was in denial. What was I going to do? I didn't tell very many people at first. I was overcome by my depression. I stopped showing up to my job. I just oftentimes would want to be alone. One especially difficult night, I was sitting in the bottom of my shower and just sobbing and just letting that warm water blend with my own tears and just full of shame. I had even considered that maybe I would take my own life. But I immediately thought no, because then I would be held accountable for taking my baby's life, and I couldn't do that. I would later realize that this beautiful baby would help save my life in more ways than one. Out of fear and desperation, I just started to pray. I hadn't prayed in a while, so I pleaded with God to not leave me now. This baby needed me, and though I had gotten in a bad habit of letting myself down, I was not going to let this baby down. So I prayed for courage, and then I felt courage. I was able to tell the birth father. He said he would help me with anything that I needed. 1 week later, he was arrested and put in prison. I immediately recognized that God was helping me with a feeling that I started to have. That this baby deserved a happy home. That he deserved a mother and a father that would teach him about God and about our brother Jesus Christ. I knew that I could be a good single mom, but I just didn't trust the birth father to help me raise a child in a way that I felt was safe or healthy. I had been raised by good parents and had wonderful siblings, and I wanted that for my baby. So I decided to place my baby for adoption. I felt like if even I couldn't have a relationship with my baby in this lifetime, that I would be able to have a relationship with him in the next lifetime. I prayed for more courage because I had to tell my parents. I called them on a Friday and I asked if I could come up on Sunday and if that they would fast and pray for me. that I had been making some life decisions and I wanted to talk with him about them. So Sunday came and I needed more courage. So how do you tell your parents that you're the greatest disappointment in their life? And that I knew that they would feel shock and a myriad of emotions, and I just wanted, and I didn't want to stay very long after I told them what happened, and so I wrote them a letter. I wanted to write my love, my apology, my faith, and my plan to place my baby for adoption. So Sunday came, and like as I said, and I was able to sit down and tell my parents that I was expecting a baby and would be placing this baby for adoption. Gentle tears were shed, and a few minutes of shock passed. And then my mother hugged me, and she welcomed me to motherhood. I was so grateful for her. In that moment, both my parents were so patient. And in that moment, I told them I knew that they would need some time to process what I had told them, and that I would give them their space, and I handed them my letter, and then I left. So then I needed more courage. I needed counseling for myself, and I needed child service to help me start selecting an adoptive family. So I found an amazing counselor, and I started a God-filled journey of healing and forgiving myself. At that same time, I had a loved one that someone I cared for very much, who had a loved one that they cared for very much, that she told her that she knew someone, a girl that would be placing a baby for adoption. And I'm going to call this woman Angel. Angel knew that this baby was a baby boy, and that this baby boy would become hers, that she was going to adopt him. Though Angel and her husband had children of their own, Angel had had a very special experience years ago that helped her to know that she would one day have a baby boy. She was devastated when she eventually realized that this would not be able to happen. She wasn't able to bring this baby boy into the world. She was confused, but had faith and trusted God that someday, somehow, that God would bring this little boy into her life. That day had come, she knew it, and that this little boy would soon be joining her little family. In the meantime, I learned that I would be having a little baby boy. Each day, as I began to feel him move within me, I loved him more and more. I could feel that he was a special spirit and that he had a mission, and that was to help save me. My firstborn son would help me understand more about Heavenly Father's firstborn son. I began to finally personally understand what Jesus Christ and our Savior did for me. At this time, I was working, and my boss had hired someone to work with me, and her name was Angel. Yeah, Angel knew about me, and I knew about Angel and her desire to adopt a baby boy. But we immediately became friends. We connected so easily. It was like she was a sister that I hadn't quite met yet. And so I was just grateful for this new friendship. Soon after I met her, I was ready to start thinking about who I would place my baby for adoption with, what family would be his. And the adoption agency, they gave me a stack of files. Each would have a letter from the family and a picture that went along with it. And my loved one that I knew had gotten Angel's letter and her picture of her family, and I had put it at the back of this stack of papers. I was gonna do my due diligence and go through each of those names and family and to see what I felt. I really believed and know that God would guide me to whoever his family would be. And so one night when I was alone, I began praying and just asking God to help me know. And I went through each of the files, and I grieved for these families because so many were babyless. So many had been on an adoption journey, and for whatever reason they were trying to adopt a baby. Their hearts were longing for a hole that would need to be filled. And I prayed for each of them. And then when I got to the back, when I got to that last letter, I read Angel's letter, and she shared the story of her experience where she knew that she would have a little boy someday. And I cannot describe the warmth of emotion and joy, just peace that came over me, that I knew that this was going to be that this would be my little boy's family. And I sobbed and I sobbed. Over time, Angel shared with me that she wanted an open adoption with me, which meant that we would share pictures, and that, and even on occasion, she said that she would even allow me to see him. And so this brought me so much joy. I knew that God loved me. I knew that he loved this little boy, that he loved this family, and he was aware of every detail in my life, and that he was going to help me get through this very difficult thing that I knew that I had to do. And with all of that, he would still bless me to be able to still have a relationship, or at least be able to know about my little boy. The day came that I would deliver my precious baby. I had grown so much closer through the experience with my family and friends, and even Angel's family, and they had all walked alongside me in my grief and in my pain, and then even on this part where there was hope and peace. And I didn't want anyone to miss out on the day that he arrived. So even though a little out of the norm, kind of unique experience, I invited anyone that was comfortable to be there in the room with me as I delivered my firstborn son. And it was a beautiful experience. The nurse later told my mother that that was a very unique thing to have happen, because most of the time birth moms were left alone or had very little visitors to be there with them. And my heart broke when my mom told me that, because we ended up having a beautiful day of joy and excitement and hope and peace, and just a beautiful warm feeling filled the room. Angel was there with her husband, and we just had a beautiful experience. My sweet baby boy was finally placed in my arms. I told him how beautiful he was and how much I loved him. After a few minutes, I knew it was time to allow his mom to hold him, and I placed him in her arms, and I just watched them and just felt so much love for them. Then everyone left, and I remember being taken to my room, and I was sitting there with my best friend Erica, and I can't remember what we were talking about. I just remember there came a moment where I was overcome with this feeling of warmth and love. And I felt like arms were around me. And I knew that I was a daughter of God. I knew he loved me with every cell in my body. And I knew that I wanted to be married in the temple someday and have my own children someday. I spent the next 2 days in the hospital loving him and changing him and nursing him and singing to him and taking pictures of him. And I wanted to cherish every moment that I had, that he was mine for 2 days. Then when the time came, the family came and we got a family picture with them, with their baby and me. And I remember the adoptive father, he was so gentle as he helped me get into the truck where I would sit alongside my baby as we drove to their house. We went into their home and I remember sitting on the couch just snuggling my baby. And after a few minutes, and there was so much reverence in the room, I knew it was time. So as I stood up, someone asked if I wanted pictures taken. And I just remember saying, no, I felt like this moment was too sacred, that this moment I wanted left for my memories. And then I walked over and placed my baby in his mother's arms. And then we quietly left. I missed him so much. I even continued to pump the colostrum and made sure that he got that. But my grief was still so intense. I missed him, and God blessed me. He blessed me with Angel. She had the wisdom and understanding of a mother. She would send me pictures, but mostly she would invite me to come see him on the holidays. And I took lots of pictures. And for his first Christmas, I remember I went to Build-A-Bear, and I got him a little Build-A-Bear that I built. And you can put little messages inside it. And I remember putting a message inside there and saying in there that, I can't remember exactly what I wrote, but I remember saying that I prayed that someday he would want to know me. He would want to get to know me. And then even on my first Mother's Day, Angel even made sure that I came up and was with him that day. And I loved every minute whenever I could hold him. The next year, I met my husband, Austin. Austin, I got to meet my birth son on his first birthday, at his first birthday party. And Austin and I, we met and got married 11 weeks later in the Salt Lake Temple. And then even on our honeymoon, because of my experience, I knew that motherhood was so important to me. And Austin even said what I thought about starting a family sooner than later. And I knew almost immediately that that was absolutely something that I wanted. And our sweet, beautiful daughter, Eden, was born 11 months later. And since then, we've been blessed with, we have 6 children of our own. I have Eden, we had 3 boys, and then 2 sweet girls. And throughout my birth son, he always grew up knowing who I was. He had a picture of me. He and I were together on my wedding day. That was always on his dresser. His family even had the picture of us together in the hospital. They're displayed in the home. And he was taught that his mommy's belly was broken, and that Elizabeth had agreed that she would help bring him to their family. And so when he was about 4, he said, well, that was nice of her. I always remember that story because I was so grateful that they were teaching him that I was good. and that I loved him. In the beginning, I would just call on his birthdays. Angel and I would talk occasionally and share love on Mother's Days to each other. I even got to be at his baptism, and he snuggled right into me in that family picture, and my heart just melted with joy. And as he got older, I started to feel that maybe he felt like, he had to talk to me and tell me that he loved me when it was his birthday. And I didn't want him to grow up feeling like he had to have a relationship. I mean, in my mind, I wasn't his mom. To him, I was just this woman that he'd heard about. And I didn't want to have him feel like he was obligated to that. And so I just started to call just on his birthdays, and I would write a letter. And but a few years ago, his mom asked him if he wanted to get to know me. And he said yes, he did. And I just remember how excited, and I just cried. I told Austin that he wanted to meet me. And so we met. He was a little timid, and that's okay. He gave me a few hugs, and again, my heart just melted. Then it was about 2 Mother's Days ago, he texted me Happy Mother's Day, and that he loved me. Or was it 3? It was 3 Mother's Day. No, was it 2? Anyway, it was a few Mother's Days ago. He texted me for the first time, and he told me that he loved me, and that he was grateful for me for all I had done, and that he loved me. And so again, I just cried. Since then, we've been able to spend some time with each other here and there. And one of the most special memories for me is he actually even was there at my daughter Mara's funeral about 1.5 years ago. And I was so grateful. He came with his mom, and they were there for me in a way that was so special, and I'm so grateful to them. He is such a wonderful young man. He's intelligent, he's funny, he's kind, he's handsome, and he's even decided that he's going to serve his country. And I'm so very blessed and grateful for the decision that I made to place him for adoption, and to place him with the family that loved him even before he was born. My adoption story, though there have definitely been times of grief and pain and sorrow, when I invited God into my story, he was able to turn ashes into such beauty, and these tender mercies and what I felt like are miracles just became such a part of my life ever since then. And so I just want to invite anybody that has these adoption stories that, I'm sensitive that not all stories are like mine. But I do know that if you haven't already, that if you do invite God in, that he can work wonders. And whether it's in this life or the next life, he can make all things whole. And he'll make all things right someday, whatever your story is, for those birth parents or birth adoptive parents or birth families or adoptive families, or especially that child who is adopted, that you're loved, that God loves you. He's aware of you. He's aware of the details in your life, and just to ask him to be a part of it. Thank you for coming and listening to my story. I'm grateful for all of you that are watching and those that are following survivors. We are a nonprofit organization. Our goal is to connect and help go on the grief journey with anyone who's lost a loved one, that we can do service in honor of your loved one. That's what our goal is to not have to go through this alone, that we can love and support each other, that we can mourn with those that are mourning, and that we can serve others and find peace and joy through that service. And that's why we're called survivors, is because we can serve to survive after our loss. And thanks again for coming and watching tonight. And we will, please connect with us, reach out to us. Please share our survivors page. We really want to help support anyone that we can. Thank you and have a good night.